Dun 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 dun. Hey, it's Thursday, time for another Action Figure Adventures video here on SEO Tour Review. Today, Baby Skeletor and I are taking a look at Drogon from Game of Thrones. I was walking through FYE the other day, and I happened to spot this Drogon figure. Didn't even know he was coming out. I've reviewed all the figures that McFarlane has released so far, even if not all the videos are out yet. Viserion, I'm talking to you, buddy. But I had no idea that Drogon was coming out. I kind of figured they had to be planning on doing some more releases from this line, because how do you get the license to Game of Thrones and not make more than 5 figures? But I was blown away to see Drogon in the store. I had to pick him up and bring him home and do a review. I totally called out the fact that I hadn't posted my Viserion review yet, but I also haven't reviewed Jon Snow. Whoops. Alright, here we've got Drogon out of the package, and we're going to take a closer look, and, I've played with him just a second here as I took him out of the box, and these guys being deluxe figures, these dragons, I don't know, McFarlane. You're kind of letting me down like Season 8 a little bit. I've decided that the best thing I can do, since I haven't put out my Viserion video yet, despite it already being filmed, is to combine these two reviews. Here's Drogon out of the package. He's got a fair amount of paintwork on this figure, but it's not nearly as good as the paintwork on the package. He's got articulation at the neck. There's actually a pivot point back here near his body, as well as one in the middle of the neck and one at the head. Depending on how you... Whoops. It's all ball jointed there. I just popped them apart by accident. My point was that I wanted to show that in certain poses you can see kind of like the gaps between the sections and it will look bad, but in most general posing you can make him look pretty good. He's got ratcheting ball joints at the shoulders there to allow his wings to be posed in a lot of different positions. You can sort of have them arching over like he's getting ready for takeoff, or more of a soaring pose, which is common in the show. I do think it's kind of a shame that there isn't a really tiny Dany figure that we get that can clip onto the back somehow, since, this is her dragon and she rides him a lot in the show. He's got articulation at the hips, and this we start to see some of the underbelly here. He has a giant hole in the belly for his flight stand, which is the same on the other dragon, but he also has pins in his feet, so you can mount him on his base. He looks okay on the base standing, but I would love it if you didn't have these pins stuck in his feet all the time, because when you put him on the flying stand, even though you put his feet back, in certain poses, again, you do notice the pegs. You will notice that there is some dry brushing in the paint that looks pretty good, but he is a little sparse on the belly and the legs here. And this brings us around to the back to his tail. The tail has some nice sculpting on it. It has a ball joint right there. It has some red details in it. And they chose to use the old gummy with a wire inside Bendham's type articulation here. You can see the little pinholes that are always visible on those types of toys. And so his tail can be bent around and posed using a wire. It's good in the sense that you don't see articulation points, but it's bad in the sense that these wire things generally aren't very posable anyway, and you run the risk of the wire breaking out eventually, which always happens with these bendy Easter bunnies and stuff that we all had as kids. I'm not sure I would have chose to use that bendy technology on a deluxe figure that's, pretty much geared at adult collectors. Drogon comes with this snowy base. It has 3 holes in it. 2 of them are for his feet. 1 is for the flight stand that can be pegged in there. I found Drogon's flight stand rather difficult to use. It is not very large, and with his big wings and his big tail, he's very top-heavy. The other thing that I think is kind of a shame, Drogon does not come with a breath weapon. He does not have a fire-breathing blast effect, especially considering his role in the final season. How could they do without that? I feel like the designers of this toy really wanted you to use this as a static display of him standing, I bet they reused the torso on Viserion for Drogon, and so it had the peg for the flight stand, so they included the flight stand, a much shorter flight stand this time, probably to help with the balance. But anyway, I think Drogon is kind of cool. I have some of the same thoughts I had with Viserion in that he is kind of a shame that he's so far out of scale with the figures in this line, but I get it. The dragons would be enormous. So I don't know, a little conflicted. He looks pretty nice, but there's some wonky things with his execution. So now that I've taken a look at Drogon, we're going to take a look at Viserion, and then we're going to compare them together at the end of this video. Hey, it's Thursday, time for another Action Figure Adventures video here on SEO Tour Review. Today, Baby Skeletor and I are taking a look at the Game of Thrones Icy Viserion Deluxe action figure from McFarlane Toys. The back of his package shows off Jon Snow, Daenerys Targaryen, the Night King, Arya Stark, and of course Viserion himself. I have previously reviewed Daenerys, the Night King, and Arya. Here we have Icy Viserion out of the package. Baby Skeletor's holding on to him, and you can see just how big that wingspan really is. They call it a deluxe figure, and sculpting-wise, detail-wise, I think it is. Scale-wise, it's so tiny. I mean, it's big. It's big. Look at how big those wings are. But, you know, it's got a huge wingspan, and then this really tiny dragon body. And I get it. We're probably never going to get a large-scale Game of Thrones dragon in scale to any action figures or whatever. But, man, a boy could dream. Viserion has articulation at the wings. In his shoulder joint area there, they're a ratcheting joint. Most times this figure is displayed or shown with the wings down, recreating a scene from the show. But those wings can move out to the side and actually up pretty high in a flapping motion, which I think is pretty cool. The wings do have nice detail to them with the holes and all the different shading and stuff. They're actually slightly translucent in a few spots, which is cool. There is articulation at the neck. There's a pivot point here, and then further out there is an additional 2 pivot points. Not a huge range of up and down motion, but some. It would have been really cool if the jaw was articulated, but I understand that. While we're taking a look at Viserion's head, he also comes with this blue fire or ice breath. Is it blue fire? Is that what it's supposed to be? But that plugs into the mouth very easily. It looks nice. There's a lot of cool shading on that, but it's mostly made out of a translucent blue plastic. But I'm glad that is removable if you don't want him blasting his breath weapon all the time. Then as we move down here, there is a large peg hole in his chest. There's no good way of hiding that, and you're really not going to use this figure without the display stand probably, so it's fine that that's there. The legs are articulated. I don't really know what you're going to do with these legs otherwise. There's no other articulation in them other than the hips. There is a nice area of motion here in the tail, so if you want him to be flying really fast with his tail out, or, more perched with it down. Below that, though, all the points are just sort of swivels in the tails. There is a little bit of, left and right movement in them, but not much. It's mostly just the turn points. So, lots of articulation in the tail, lots of articulation in the neck, but very little articulation in the legs, and actually not a lot of articulation in the wings either, just good range of motion at that shoulder joint. So it's kind of funny for a deluxe figure. What do you consider deluxe? I don't know. It definitely looks cool. The final accessory that Viserion comes with is this snowy base and metal rod flight stand. I've got Viserion mounted on his flight stand, which allows you to display him in that flying pose. We can plug in his fire breath to complete the scene. The one thing that would be really cool, I guess it might have been too tiny, but how about a little Night King action figure? It doesn't have to be articulated at all, that just kind of clips on the back there. Did Viserion attack the wall without the Night King? I don't even know. I'm pretty sure he was riding on him, right? So I don't think we've ever seen Icy Viserion attack anything without the Night King riding him. I don't know. Minor gripe. I do think it's a nice display piece. Let's activate that breath. Ooh, that's nice looking. Let's zoom in on that. Ooh, that's cool. Now it's time to take a look at both of these figures. Here are the two figures out of the package. It's really hard to show them both on screen at the same time. The way they are sculpted, Viserion seems to have a much larger wingspan, but it's mostly because his wings are completely spread out and Drogon's are a little bit more folded up. They have a very similar level of detail in their sculpt, but the dry brushing on Viserion is more consistent throughout the figure, making him appear to have a much better paint job. All those details are picked out really nicely on his body, whereas Drogon, they're kind of plain. The more I look at these, I don't think that they're identical torsos. I thought maybe they reused the center section, and that was the reason for putting the flight stand on both. It looks like they sculpted new torsos for both figures. They must have just wanted the flight stand to be used on both. Here are the flight stands next to each other. You can see there's a major height difference. There's also a pretty big difference in the amount of space they take up, which does affect your ability to balance. You can see Viserion has more standard articulation points in his tail. 1, 2, 3, and 4 down here at the end. Maybe the designers felt like they could get more flexibility and posability out of it, especially since they were trying to make Drogon fly or stand on a base, because with him they went with that bendy tail feature. I don't know. Like the tip here, you can't do anything with it. It just doesn't stay. So I would argue you have less articulation with this tail. Maybe it's the weight of that rubbery tail or the position of the wings that makes Drogon so hard to pose, because I put him on Viserion's flight stand here, and he's definitely having some issues. One of the things I really liked about Viserion was his Ice Breath Accessory. I think that was sculpted really nicely and looks really good, but I have noticed that having him on display in my collection for a while, it is really starting to droop. The weight of the end here at this little tiny pin has really made it, limp. And so maybe I'm less disappointed that there wasn't a fire accessory with Drogon. But I just figured to show it off, imagine how cool it would be if Drogon could spit flames. Imagine this in red or orange plastic. Could have been pretty cool. So this has been my review of both of the deluxe dragon figures from McFarlane Toys. These Game of Thrones toys are pretty cool that they're doing. I'm not sure how many figures they have planned. They initially showed off 4 characters and a dragon. Drogon took me by surprise at FYE the other day. So I had to, get this review out finally. The Viserion content I had has been sitting around just waiting for a time slot to go in. With Game of Thrones over and the backlash, I just didn't rush to put it up. But when I saw Drogon, I decided, gotta get these reviews out. Thanks for watching this Action Figure Adventures video. Do Baby Skeletor a favor, hit that like and subscribe button.